You all know me. You know what I do for a living. Alright, maybe you don't. My name's Richard Kirkham, and this is my blog site. I've been doing video blogs on and off for the last 3 years, and the truth of the matter is that I've made a commitment to make sure to do video blogs much more consistently. 38 years ago, the motion picture industry changed forever. The summer of 1975 saw the release of what I consider the greatest adventure film ever made, Jaws. Steven Spielberg, who is making only his second film, managed to turn what was something of a potboiler melodrama with a fish in it into the biggest movie attraction ever up to that time, and a movie that still has ramifications for filmmakers 30, 40 years later. Here's what I am motivated to talk about Jaws for. We're going to a screening tonight. In the other room I've got 2 tickets, actually 3 tickets, to a screening at the Cinerama Dome right there on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood for Jaws. It doesn't usually play on the big screen. It's always a special screening when they're doing something like that. And that kind of inspired me. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts the last week or two. And you know what? It seems like maybe people would be interested in a little chat about Jaws. If you're not interested, I understand. Go ahead and move on to something else. But the truth of the matter is, I don't see how anybody could get tired of talking about the greatest adventure film of all time. Let me start by talking about how it was a cultural phenomena back in 1975. To begin with, and most people who are in the movie industry will acknowledge, Jaws was the first great summer blockbuster. It changed the way movies were marketed. Jaws came out and it was released on 1,000 screens, which was so many more than most films were released on those days. And of course the money came rolling in instantaneously and kept rolling in for nearly 2 years, on and off with different re-releases, that it seemed impossible that summer movie releases would ever be the same. And in fact they haven't been. That may be bad news for some people. I know that there's some who are a little nostalgic for the old days when you got movies being platform released and they would roll out slowly and they would build interest, and not everybody saw it on the first weekend and it wasn't available 4 weeks later on DVD. But that's the world we live in now, and in some parts that's the fault of the movie that I'm talking about today. Look, Jaws was a cultural phenomenon. Everybody was talking about it. It became ubiquitous. The culture was filled with references to Jaws. We start off with the theme music. That cue, just those 4 cello notes being played, that's become a signpost of danger or something ominous coming, and it's been parodied 1,000 times. It's been used in all kinds of situations and circumstances, and even if they don't use those same 4 notes because they're worried about copyright infringement, they're definitely going to use something similar to that to get the same effect. John Williams' music for this is amazing. Jaws was one of the first films that was really truly successfully merchandised. Later on there were plenty of toys for Star Wars. You know, that came a couple years later. But Jaws, there weren't Jaws toys per se, but I'll tell you what, this image that you see on this poster back here, that was emblazoned on t-shirts, lunchboxes, notebooks. People had stickers. It was everywhere you looked. I have a little bit of history that go along with that. I think I wrote about this on a friend's blog page when he wrote about the movie Jaws. I had a friend in high school. 1975 was the year I graduated from high school. He had graduated the year before, and he had his own t-shirt company business. And that summer he was putting out t-shirts, of course, that had the Jaws poster logo on it, the famous shark coming up from beneath the girl swimming across the top of the ocean. And I remember riding with him down to Orange County from his place here, you know, up in Alhambra, where we used to live. And he had to get boxes and boxes of stickers that he was going to be doing. And I thought, oh my gosh, are you ever going to sell that many? Like 2 or 3 weeks later, I think I went with him again. And we picked up more boxes of those stickers. He was doing a bang-up business in selling t-shirts with the Jaws logo on it. Of course, nowadays everybody knows the story of Jaws. There have been 3 sequels, most of them unfortunate. The music, like I said before, is ubiquitous. I remember seeing Saturday Night Live back in the 70s, and they had the land shark, which was clearly a takeoff of the Jaws theme. So everywhere you look, there was something about Jaws that was going on. Well, I've got personal history with the movie Jaws, and I know a lot of times people who are interested in films, maybe they don't care that much about the personal history, but that's always been kind of my philosophy concerning writing about movies and talking about them, is because I think movies are a personal experience, and when I write about them I want to share my personal experiences with them. So I'm going to share a few personal experiences with you here. To begin with, I saw the movie Jaws the opening weekend back in June of 1975. I went with my friend Dan. Dan, Art, and I were all close friends. We'd been debate partners in high school. And Art didn't go with us because he was taking some girl out that he was trying to impress, and he took her to another movie down in Hollywood. Dan and I went and saw Jaws at the Hastings Ranch Theater in Pasadena, which was a small multiplex. They had 3 theaters there. Jaws was playing in the biggest of those 3 theaters. It probably held about 500 people. And the theater was packed. We sat maybe 15th, 16th row and watched the movie, and I'll tell you what, it was so incredible to see the way the audience reacted to that movie. You could just see people sinking down into their seats at the beginning in that first scene when Chrissy goes out for her night swim. And you could watch their hands being thrown up across their faces as the shark attack went on, and the horrified looks on their expressions. If you looked around, nobody was breathing. There was no noise. You could hear a pin drop when that shark attack was done. Later on, when there's that famous scene when Hooper goes back into the water in his scuba outfit looking at Ben Gartner's boat that's been sunk, and Ben Gartner makes a sudden appearance, I am not joking. I saw almost 500 people levitate out of their seats simultaneously. Sorry about that, bad timing. I never thought I would run out of battery power like that. Right in the middle of an exciting story, too. Like I was saying, I literally saw 500 people come out of their seats, almost a foot, jumping at one time. That's the effect that the movie had on people. We'd been set up, we'd been excited, tension was building up, and the whole audience reacted in an uproar. I must have seen the movie 2 or 3 times that summer. In those days, that would be a lot for seeing a movie in a theater. I'll tell you what, a year later, I started dating my wife. Probably later that year. We'd gone out a little bit before, but the next year, when Jaws was re-released in theaters to pick up some extra scratch, I know that she and I went together, and she told me the story about having read the book and being in the bathtub while she was reading the book and having a bar of soap fall into the tub and splash when she was in a scary part of the book, and she jumped right out of the bathtub and ran to the door and frightened everybody else in the house with her scream. That's the way people were reacting to the movie Jaws at the time. It was, like I said, a cultural phenomenon. It was something that was pretty spectacular. Many years later, when we had kids, I loved sharing movies with my kids, and I'm afraid I'm a bad man. I shouldn't have done this. When my kids were little, they saw, of course, the cover of the movie Jaws on I think it must have been a laser disc at that point. In fact, it could even have been that laser disc right there. It's quite possible. They wanted to see it, and I said, no, it's not really appropriate, and they begged and they begged, and I said, okay, and we showed them the movie, but what we did was each one of them sat on one of our laps. So I had one of the kids on my lap, my wife had one of the kids on her lap, and anytime something came along that was a little too intense, a little too scary, up went the hands over the eyes. Sometimes we'd hum and sing a little bit to cover up the screams or the horrifying kinds of things, and then we'd put our hands down so they could see that something bad had happened, but they didn't see the whole bad thing that happened, and they knew a little bit about the story. So, as it happens that, my kids were young, my wife and I would go out, and my mother would babysit for us. And she learned how to use the Laserdisc player. the kids always wanted to see a movie, and sure enough, they asked to see Jaws one time. Well, my mother was not an idiot. She looked at them and said, "No, you can't see that movie. That's not really appropriate for you." And the kids said, of course, "Well, Mom and Dad have already shown us this movie." Now, my kids were 4 and 6 at the time, and my mother must have thought we were insane, but the kids told her the story, so she assumed that we had in fact shown her the story. What she didn't know, of course, was that we hadn't shown them all of the gruesome parts. So there she sat one night with the kids, both crawling up on top of her, horrified by the things that they hadn't seen before and traumatized for the rest of their lives. A summer or two later, I know that actually I think it might have been the very next summer, we went camping with some friends of ours. Actually, they camped, we stayed in a condo. But we were up in Mono Basin, up there near June Lake and all that area. And the kids stayed one night at the campsite with our friends, and everybody was telling scary stories. And Amanda was only 4 at the time, and whenever she wanted to tell a scary story, it always started off, "It's a scary story about a shark named Jaws." And that's the story that she told all summer long. A scary story about a shark named Jaws. So my kids have been up to their necks in this their whole lives. This is a movie that swallows them. In fact, I'm speaking to you right now from my daughter's bedroom. This is a cheap reproduction poster that a friend of hers gave her for her birthday, and it probably cost $5 or $10 for the poster. The frame is something my wife and I supplied, $300 for that. So that'll just show you how insane we are when it comes to this particular movie, and her especially, because it is her favorite movie, and it is one of my favorite movies, you know, maybe my #2 film of all time. I'll tell you what, my daughter, Amanda, who I just mentioned, this movie was so important to her that she wrote her college admissions essay on the Indianapolis speech that Quint talks about in the scene there on the boat. And everybody who's seen Jaws knows the story behind the Indianapolis speech, how it was originally written, and then John Milius wrote in some, and then Robert Shaw modified it a little bit for himself, and you know, they really did a lot of work on it. And I'll tell you what, I've got a blog post on this. To me, that is one of the great acting scenes of all time, that 4 minutes when Shaw tells the story of being on the Indianapolis. And it's one of the things that makes this movie different. It's not just a scary movie. It's not just about a fish hunt. It's about human beings who have history and passion and fear that are a big part of their lives. Some of the things that are controlling the way they're communicating. Alright, we've been to several screenings before of the movie. In fact, I took the kids and my wife to a screening at Universal Studios probably back in 1997, I think it was. And the screening was actually at the Universal Amphitheater. They had a giant screen that they set up across the stage. This is an amphitheater that they usually, you know, rock acts usually play at. And part of the auditorium was closed off because they weren't going to sell 5,000 seats to this particular screening, but they did sell a couple of thousand seats because it was pretty packed. And we got there a little early, and they had had a screening earlier in the day of Psycho, and we got to sit in with Pat Hitchcock, who was there talking about her father and the movie Psycho before the movie Jaws screened. And we just came to see Jaws, so we stayed and saw the movie there. So that was the first time that my kids saw Jaws on the big screen, and it was a pretty big screen. Then about 4 years ago, my daughter and I went to see The Shark is Still Working, which is a documentary about the impact of the movie Jaws, and we saw it at the LA United Film Festival, which was a great experience because they had the production designer, they had the screenwriter, Carl Gottlieb, they had 2 or 3 of the supporting actors there, some of the other production people, and a couple of the producers who all came up and spoke about the film. And as well as talking about the movie Jaws, they talked about the background and making of the documentary. It was a wonderful experience. And that film is now available as part of the Jaws Blu-ray package. If any of you are Jaws fans and have not seen The Shark is Still Working, there's a treat that you've got coming to you, and I would strongly recommend that. The week before we saw the documentary, they had a screening of Jaws at the Vista Theater, not too far from where the LA United Film Festival was screening, there in the Silver Lake, not Silver Lake area, I guess the Los Feliz area. And so we went to the Vista Theater to see Jaws on the big screen, and Carl Gottlieb was there. And Carl Gottlieb got up and spoke a little bit before the movie, and after the movie he was out in the lobby and he was signing for people. And we didn't get an autograph, but we did get to shake his hand and talk to him a little bit about the movie, and that was quite exciting. So that was another one of those experiences that we had where we got to see the movie in its best environment on the big screen. Now, I tell you what, I'm incredibly jealous of my youngest daughter. She was spoiled rotten. She went to USC, which I did as well, but she was in addition to being a communication major, she had a cinema minor and an advertising minor, and she took several classes that dealt with motion pictures. And one of the classes focused on the films of Steven Spielberg. They showed most of Spielberg's works. They talked about them. There were several scholarly articles that have been written about them. And the great Steven Spielberg appeared and spoke to their class in probably the moment that she'll most remember from being in college. One of those fantastic experiences that you only get when you are in a place like USC. So she was really happy about that. But one of the things that they did do during that semester is they screened the movie Jaws, but they didn't do it during the class. They screened the movies primarily in the evening. So I met her down there, and I was able to see Jaws on the big screen down at the USC campus in one of the theaters there in the George Lucas or Steven Spielberg Film Center there. And that was really a good experience too. Jaws is one of the movies that I blogged about the first summer that I started my blog project. If you ever go to the blog, you'll read that I got started on the project primarily because I had some dead time between when my spring classes had finished and when my summer classes began. So instead of wasting that time, I decided I'd start a blog project, and I blogged about movies that I saw in the summers of the 1970s, and of course Jaws is on that list. It may in fact be like the 10th or 12th film I blogged on. You can check it out later yourself. It's a pivotal movie of the summers of the 70s. Like I said, it changed the way motion pictures are made and marketed, and I loved writing about it. I shared some of the experiences that I just talked to you about in that blog as well. Since that original blog, I've posted 2 or 3 other articles on Jaws on my website. We did a Robert Shaw Film Festival a couple of years ago because I think we'd come across some film that he was in that Amanda hadn't seen before, and we watched it. She said, "Geez, so great," and I said, well, we should do a film festival. So I think I did 5 or 6 Robert Shaw films, and I wrote again about his performance in Jaws, probably one of the most unrewarded but greatest motion picture acting performances ever. And I still wish that somebody would acknowledge how terrific it was 38 years later. Give him a special Academy Award or something. My gosh, how ridiculous is it? I bet most people won't remember the other nominees that year, much less the winner, George Burns. All right. I also participate in conversations on a number of other blogs, and I'll tell you what, Jaws is a film that comes up on almost everybody's blog if they're a movie fan. I've yet to encounter somebody who didn't love the movie. There are some people out there who are haters, but they haven't written their own blogs about it. They just come in and drop in some comments now and then about how much they didn't really care for the film. But anybody who writes about it on their blog obviously is going to care a great deal about the movie. I'll tell you what, if you are interested in reading a really terrific article about Jaws that goes into the history of the making of the film, its cultural impact, it gives you a good thumbnail history without having to read a whole book. My friend Dan Fogarty has a post at his website, Fogg's Movie Reviews. I'll post a link for you down below on the site here so that you can find that later on. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to try and put together a few video clips when we're at the movie. We'll see how it goes. I don't know how lucky I'll be. I don't know whether everything will come out the way I want it to. But I got enthusiastic, like I said, about talking about movies again, and maybe putting up the video blog like I said. And I thought, after listening to the podcast, I thought I might as well go ahead and take a chance. I'm going to see if I can talk to a few people at the movie tonight, maybe take some pictures and add them to this post. So I'll tell you what, until we get a chance to meet again, my friends, and I do think of you as my friends, after all, amity means friendship, I'll be continuing to watch movies. Hopefully you'll come back and visit and enjoy what is hopefully a sight and an activity that is entertaining to you. And if you don't like the movie Jaws, don't ever come back, because I don't want to hear from you. All right. Farewell and adieu, you fair Spanish ladies. Say, so tell me, how many times have you seen this movie?
More than I have of fingers and toes. Absolutely. Big fan.
And how many times have you seen it on the big screen?
This will be my second time.
Second time on the big screen.
I saw it at the Alex last year in Glendale.
All right.
With Joe Alves and Carl Gottlieb. That was great.
Excellent, yes.
That was outstanding.
We saw both of them at the Shark is Still Working at the LA United Film Festival.
Very good.
Like 4 years before.
Very good.
So it was excellent, excellent. And how about you, Mr. Quint?
I can't wait to see this movie. I've lived it. This will be my second time on the big screen.
Excellent, excellent.
First time as a little baby, if you could ever imagine me little.
Oh.
But yeah, that was, you know, my dad thought it was a good idea to take me as a kid, and I had to wait till an adult to understand that he was right.
How old were you when you first saw it?
I have no idea. I'm still scared from it. So.
I actually just remembered I did see it on a big screen in the wave pool at Raging Waters. They showed the original Jaws there.
That's awesome, in the wave pool.
That. And let me ask you, how did therapy go? Is it okay?
Still going through it. Still going through it. Okay.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you, gentlemen, for speaking with me. I appreciate it. Guys have a good time?
Yeah,
of course.
Again, what was it? The site?
The site is Kirkham, a movie a day. If you just Google it, you can find it. It's pretty easy. It's Kirkham, Kirkham.
Okay.
All right? Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. Take care. So, did you have a good time?
I did. Are you recording right now?
Sure. Tell us about what a great time you had.
It's just a perfect movie.
It's just perfect. Isn't it great?
It's tearing up a little.
It's always awesome. It's always awesome. Did you see all the people out there with the shark stuff? There was a guy wearing a shark hat earlier.
Like toy thing.
Mm-hmm. Looks like everybody's having a pretty good time, huh? All right. Well, welcome back. We just got back from our screening of Jaws down at the Cinerama Dome, and we're anxious to talk about our reaction to it. So, Amanda, did you see anything that you hadn't seen before?
I didn't see anything I hadn't seen before. I heard a couple of things that I hadn't heard before. For example, I didn't know that Brody cursed when the shark first appears and they're all rushing around to get things done and to get the barrels out, and he says shit at one point, and I didn't hear that before. I heard the, you know, 4 grand my ass thing, but this is the first time that I was like, hey.
Well, I noticed that Hooper was telling the guys that he was having the conversation with after he was measuring the shark on the dock there, that they should back off. He didn't want to get beat up for just offering his opinion, and I don't remember having heard that before.
Oh, I'd heard that before. I think he used the word semantics, And I hadn't heard that before, but I'd
Okay.
heard, you know, a difference of opinion, and I don't want to get beaten up for it, but...
Had you noticed the one fisherman blowing at the back of his head during that scene?
I didn't even notice that.
It's kind of funny when he's talking to the guys, and you notice the two guys in the front, the fisherman in the back, who looks like he is really one of those old fisherman types. He's got kind of a craggy face, and it's all pulled back and that sort of thing. He's blowing at the back of Hooper's head like he's blowing little circles into his hair. And, you know, that's been there the whole time, and I've never noticed it before. But I tell you what, when it's blown up to 70 feet in front of you, there's a lot of extra stuff that you see.
Well, I'll have to watch it again and catch that this time.
One other thing I noticed is when they were assembling the shark cage, this is the first time I noticed that Brody had his shirt off while they were assembling the shark cage. And then apparently he puts it back on before they lower it in. I think it's a continuity issue, but
yeah.
you know, it's the first time I've noticed it. It never dawned on me before. So I guess maybe we were looking for, at least I was looking for some things that were a little bit different this time.
I did notice a lot of Coca-Cola products, which is kind of a prevalent thing in Spielberg films. And
I wonder, I assume there was probably a product placement thing at that particular point in time, but the first thing I noticed was the six-pack of Coke sitting on the table there in the breakfast nook where they are getting up. And of course they have the Coke placement there at the snack stand on the beach.
They also have a cooler.
There's a cooler with a whole bunch of Coke there.
Yeah.
Tab, too, which is a Coke product. And Fanta, did you notice that?
I did, yeah.
Fanta is one of those Coke products, so maybe they must have had some kind of deal going on there. Yeah. One of the things that I hadn't mentioned before in my history, we talked a little bit about how there was all this cultural stuff about sharks at the time. This actually preceded the movie, obviously, because it appears in the film. The video game that's played at the beach, Shark Hunter or Shark Killer, I think it is. I played that game at the bowling alley on Atlantic Boulevard over near where we lived back in Alhambra. When I lived on Pine Valley Drive in Alhambra, I would go over to the bowling alley there and play arcade games on my bike, and they had that game there back then, so I remember playing that game early on. That was just one of those things that I'd forgotten about, and then of course tonight it just reminded me about those kinds of things.
I do remember playing Seen It one time, and they had those like 4 still frames that are from a movie, and the first one that popped up was the still frame of that shark in the video game, and I got it within a second, and I was like, Jaws! Yes, I know this one.
There you go. So when we were at the movie, we met a few people who are obviously fans. I think you'll probably be seeing the video clip in a few minutes after we're done talking. I'm afraid it was a little bit of shaky cam stuff, but the guys were very enthusiastic about the movie, and they'll be happy. Well, you'll see. You'll enjoy it. Obviously, they are fans of the film.
Yes.
What'd you think about the crowd?
I was a little disappointed that it wasn't bigger, but then again, you know, it's the Cinerama Dome, and it is a big theater.
It's the early show because they were getting ready for 2001 at 9:30 at night.
And they were competing with Iron Man 3 opening this weekend.
I was really kind of surprised that they were running these movies this weekend in the Dome.
In the Dome on a Friday night.
When Iron Man 3 is opening, and that's probably going to be the big movie of the summer.
Yeah.
And they're not running it in their big theater there.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit odd. But I'll tell you what, this whole weekend they're running classic films on the big screen there at the Cinerama Dome. I forget exactly what they have on Saturday night, but Sunday we're going to see Lawrence of Arabia and Vertigo also at the Dome, so that'll be an extra treat. I think we'll probably do another little video blog for that one. This one's going to be probably a long blog, but we'll do a short blog for those.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what else did you see about the movie? What else did you want to talk about?
Well, this is, I think we talked about it, the 4th time that I've seen it on the big screen, and I always enjoy hearing and seeing the audience reactions. I remember seeing it in a class at SC, and we had talked about it before we had watched it, that there were people that were going to see it for the first time, and you know, I don't think I've watched the boat scene with Ben Gardner when Hooper goes to look at the hull of the boat since the first time I saw it. I'm always having my jacket over my face. So when I was watching it at SC, you know, I wasn't looking at the screen, but I was looking at the audience, and everybody jumps, and there are a couple screams, and I just like that this time, you know, same thing, and of course I jumped because of the music cue, but you hear all these other people moving, and you feel the seat shake.
And what's funny, of course, is almost everybody who was there tonight has probably seen the movie a dozen times before, and we're all still jumping a little bit.
Yeah. That's the only part that I won't watch, and I've told this story a couple of times to my friends where, you know, I was watching the movie and doing stuff and had it on in the background, and I was in the other room, and the musical cue came up for that, and I jumped. And it's just that, like, high-pitched sound that sounds like a scream, and, you know, it just gets your blood rushing, and you just go, whoa, what was that? Oh, yeah.
Well, you had an interesting theory that I hadn't considered before. We were talking about it in the car on the way back. You know, Ben Gardner had a client on his boat earlier in the day, and we don't know what happened to the client, and it's your theory.
I think that the client went with him and was also eaten by the shark. You know, it's the whole scene where everybody's getting ready to go out and hunt this thing down, and you've got like 7 different boats with, like, you know, 20 people on each boat, and he's complaining, you know, these guys will be sorry that their mothers met their fathers and that kind of thing, and the guy's just standing at the back of the boat nodding, and you realize that he's actually talking to somebody. He's not just talking to himself, and then later, you know, you get all sympathetic for Ben Gardner, but you're like, hey, what happened to that guy that was on his boat?
You know, and I remember that they've got that shot of the side of the boat where there's a bite taken out of the boat, and I wonder if that was kind of an implication that maybe the shark had taken somebody over the side, as well as, you know, poor Ben Gardner sitting there inside the bow of the boat. So that you know, every time we see this movie, there's something else that we add to it, something else that we think about and find to be kind of interesting about it.
Yeah, no, and that was, like I said, one thing that I thought about this time, and I think probably just because I'm seeing it again on the big screen and I'm just looking for different things, you know, whereas if I'm watching it at home, I'm looking for my favorite scene or my favorite, you know, line here or there. But this time it's like there's so much going on, and, you know, I'm trying to remember what part it was, but there's a part where, it's the part where they're at the beach and they've caught the shark and they're getting everybody ready for the picture, and you hear the reporter, you know, you follow him and then you get Brody. Well, this is the first time that I actually was still focusing on the reporter, and Brody's in the shot. He's the focus of the shot, and you then, like, it's very, very smoothly moved from the reporter talking about getting this out to all the other places, and then, you know, kind of swooping in with Brody and coming in and then coming right back and showing his reaction to it all. But it was the first time that I had, like, kind of kept following the reporter talking to the younger reporter, and I just had never thought about that before, and so.
Well, every time they mention Dave Axelrod and he owes him a favor, I wonder if that's the Dave Axelrod that was at Newsweek, who I think maybe became Obama's advisor, and we see in those things. I don't know that that's the same David Axelrod, but it's a thought that occurs to me because there was a Dave Axelrod who was a newspaper guy, and I don't know if that's the Dave Axelrod that became Obama's advisor. So, could be, you never know, something related to what's going on in current events.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me see. You know, the truth of the matter is that we've seen it here on the big screen. This is at least the second time I've seen it so far this year. And in case I didn't mention it before, Jaws is our annual 4th of July screening. And this year we're probably going to have to watch it a little bit early. We may drag it with us. You never know what the situation is going to be. Because I think we're going to be visiting with some friends on the 4th of July. We may have to tune it in a little bit early. and just to make sure that we compensate for not being there, have to watch it again when we get back that day. Yeah. So it'll be one of those things that'll probably be. I think that's a good way to handle the problem.
Yeah, so. Yeah. It's always good to watch it more than once, and
all right.
I have no problem watching it multiple times in a week or even a day.
Well, you wore your Jaws shirt all day long, and you did get a comment on it from those guys at the screening.
Yes.
They recognized the shirt.
Let me stand up and show you. So it's, I don't know if you can see, but it's the drawing that Quint does of the shark eating the man. There's a little man there. And so for people who haven't seen the movie, to know that it's a Jaws shirt, it says Jaws at the bottom. But it's green and it's got the chalkboard thing going on. So.
Yeah, and you're saying that's one of your favorites.
Yes.
She probably has a dozen or more Jaws t-shirts that she wears, but this is the one that she picked to wear tonight. There were several people wearing costumes and clothing, and we saw somebody who had a shark head on, that sort of thing. So the people who were there were all fans, and that's really one of the things that makes going to screenings like this a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I definitely enjoy that aspect of it, and, like I said before, hearing all the people jump and knowing, like you said, that they're people that have probably seen the movie and probably even seen it on the big screen a couple of times, and it's just one of those movies that each time you see it, it still has the ability to scare the crap out of you.
Yeah, and it's impressive. It was a very good print that we saw. It looks spectacular, and I don't understand why they don't make it an annual thing. I think they ought to release it in theaters once a year, probably the 4th of July weekend. I think they'd pick up some cash every year, every once in a while doing that. Well, so if anybody out there decides to do that, if that's you, Universal, you're watching this right now and you do that, make sure you send the check to me. It's Kirkham, a movie a day. I'll be happy to take my residual.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No. Well, I mean, we were talking about that. I was talking at least about the theory of the old versus the new approaches to shark hunting, and how there's this kind of theme that goes along with that, and that Quint's death at the end is in part aided by the new technology, because it's the tank that crushes his hand and makes him release the table and gets him to slide down. And I just, that's something that I kind of always thought about, and, just noticing that again, and noticing too that the technology, is in part the thing that kills the shark eventually, but it's the technology mixed with the old school kind of technique, and I love that that's another layer that's added to the film. And we talked about all of those different things that just kind of add to the characters, add to the story, add to the themes of the movie, and that make it so much more than just a chase film.
Yeah, it's more than a chase film. It's more than a horror film.
It's not a horror film.
No, I know, it's not a horror film. It's an adventure film, but it's also more than an adventure film. It's a great human drama, and there's an amazing story there. And you know what? We could keep talking about it for hours and hours. And we'll probably talk about it again the next time we get a chance to. So, we'd like to thank you for joining us. I'll tell you what, I'm going to, like I said, try and keep up on doing a vlog as well as the regular blog. So come back and check for new episodes of the Kirkham A Movie A Day vlog, as well as checking in with Kirkham A Movie A Day, the blog page. Thanks again, and as they say in Amity, farewell and adieu, my fair Spanish ladies.
Bye.